Hi, I'm Jonathan Raju, not Kash Patel. I get that a lot. Welcome back to the OG Spice Guy Show, Market Updates, where we look beyond the label and into the global forces shaping the organic spice world. Today, we're stepping back from individual crops and talking about something bigger, the ongoing conflict in the Middle East and what it could mean for transportation and pricing in the months ahead. This is a fast-moving situation. What's true today may shift tomorrow, and the conflict could look completely different by the time this episode goes live. So instead of reacting to headlines, we're going to focus on the underlying mechanics. What's actually happening in the supply chain, what suppliers are telling us, and what you should be watching. Let's get into it. When most people hear conflict in the Middle East, they think about one thing, gas prices, and that isn't an isolated variable. Everything that moves gets more expensive, and in the global supply chain, everything moves. Ocean freight, trucking, rail, even last-mile delivery, they all rely on fuel. So when oil prices rise, carriers adjust. You'll hear this referred to as fuel surcharges. Shipping lines, trucking companies, and logistics providers all start layering in additional costs to offset higher fuel prices. And those costs don't just stay isolated. They get passed through the entire supply chain. So what does that mean in practice? It costs more to move containers across the ocean, to move goods to the warehouse, and to move product from the warehouse to the customer. And when you start stacking this all together, you're looking at a meaningful increase in landed cost, even if the product itself hasn't changed. So that's why when we talk about geopolitical conflict, we're really talking about a cost ripple effect. Higher oil prices don't just impact energy, they quietly increase the cost of every spice, every ingredient, and every shipment moving through the system. So let's talk about what's going on in the Middle East, and probably the most important part is the Strait of Hormuz. Here's what we're hearing from suppliers and logistics partners right now. Shipping routes are tightening. They're more complex, more expensive, and less predictable. We saw a version of this during the disruptions in the Suez Canal, where vessels had to reroute around longer paths, adding weeks to transit times and significantly increasing costs. We're starting to see a similar dynamic again. Oil tankers, which are now being rerouted or prioritized, are sharing key global shipping lanes with food cargo, adding congestion to heavily trafficked ports. Certain maritime routes are being avoided or delayed, and carriers are reallocating capacity. Suppliers are telling me that costs are going up and shipping times will be delayed. But this isn't a full-blown crisis, at least not yet. It's more of a pressure build. Think of it like tightening a valve in the system. Supply chain are still moving, but with less flexibility and more friction. So let's tie this all into the spice economy. A large percentage of our global spice production comes from regions dependent on these shipping lanes: India, the Middle East, parts of Asia, and Egypt. So even if the crops themselves aren't grown in conflict zones, they still rely on global freight networks that pass through or around them. And spices are especially sensitive to this kind of disruption because they're often shipped in bulk, low-margin formats. Transport timing affects freshness and quality, and many buyers operate on tight inventory cycles. So when freight becomes less predictable, the entire system starts to feel it. So what happens next, and what should you do about it? Well, the killer here isn't actually price, it's unpredictability. If the situation stabilizes quickly, we may just see some minor cost increases and some slight delays. The market can always adjust. But if disruptions continue or escalate, we could see sustained freight inflation, longer lead times, and tighter availability on certain SKUs. While we're not in a full disruption cycle today, we're seeing the early signals. So communicate with your suppliers. Build in a little extra lead time for shipments. And if you have critical items, consider planning ahead. We'll keep monitoring this closely and bring you updates as things evolve. Thanks for listening. when I fly, because I fly so frequently and usually fly Delta, I run into the same agent at TSA who checks your ID. And he's like, did I ever tell you? And I was like, that I look like Kash Patel? Yes, you tell me that every week when I'm here. And he starts laughing, and I go, and then you start laughing every time. I go, you're literally holding my ID. You know I'm not Kash Patel.